Hi PTQ friends. Unfortunately, I can't be with you today as I'm teaching in Klerksdorp. So I'm bringing you our first design via the internet waves. And this design, and in fact, all of the designs, videos that I'm going to do, I'll leave on YouTube. And I'll also share the link for you in our PTQ group so you can go back to it and re-watch and practice at home. So you are not stuck and forced to remember everything from just our quick meeting. They'll be available on YouTube, and again, I'll post them in the group for you to watch. Now, before we start with our free motion design, remember that you do need to warm up, and especially if you're on the beginner side, I do have some important exercises for you, and I will post the link to that short video, or actually the short little video itself, I'll post in our PTQ group. And go and start with that exercise that I've shown you there, which is up, downs, left, rights, and then circles in a row to do as your warm-up exercise, and so that you can get back into the swing of free motion if you haven't done it in a long while. Then today's design, the inspiration comes from a little piece of, call it artwork or a little wall decoration, a little wood panel that I have hanging just outside my studio, and it is a piece that I bought many years ago from Mr. Price Home, actually, and it kind of looks like a faux wood grain, and I thought, well, that would be good because it's an interesting texture that can be created, and it's really not a difficult design if I simplify it. And here's what it looks like when it's done. Now, you do not need to be an intermediate or advanced quilter to do this. This really is a good exercise for a beginner quilter. And the advanced or intermediate quilters will find they flow quite easily with this. And it can become a great filler, a background filler, but also work within borders and sashing when you think about other projects as well. When we have a quick chat about thread work, I just want to say this today, and we will be experimenting a little bit more with thread colors as we progress through our 6-month project, is that initially we're going to start off with threads matching your fabric. Now, with any and every other class that I teach, I always have you take and work on a sample piece of fabric or a sample sandwich first so you can practice your design. And if you remember from last month, I mentioned please don't use calico. Calico, the weave of the fabric is too rough and wide apart and actually influences your stitch quality and the way your design looks. So stay away from calico, even for a practice piece. Stay away from that. Rather use a good quality poly cotton if you're looking for something to practice on and you don't want to use any of your good cottons, or you don't have big enough scraps to practice on. That would be a better option than calico. So make yourself a practice sandwich where you can just practice these designs before you head into them. And this month we're going to just stick to a tone-on-tone thread. In other words, match your thread color to your fabric. That way it hides a lot of inconsistencies that can happen, and you'll only pick up texture. And that is what we want with this design. We don't necessarily want all the thread work to show. Here we want the texture to show. Okay, so you can either work with a 40 weight thread or a 60 weight thread. That doesn't really matter, but match your thread color to your fabric, the top of your fabric. Balance your tension out nicely so that you don't have any of your bottom thread showing at the top. And then play along. Okay, now to the good part, and so that I don't keep you up for an entire hour, here's how our design goes. I'm just going to choose a little bit of a different color so it's all nicely visible. Okay, I'm going to change my orientation. The design I've just turned horizontally, but obviously any quilt design can happen in any direction. And I'm just going to do this as up and down because initially stitching up and down, in other words, away from you and back towards you, is an easier way to quilt until you become comfortable with the design. Then you can start changing direction and practice direction changes. So here's how our design goes. Initially, we're going to start with creating the knots. So those areas, that's what we're going to do first, all the knots in our wood, and then we're just going to fill it with almost an echo. And the emphasis lies in almost an echo, because it's not going to be an exact echo all the way through. This is free flowing. There's no right or wrong that can happen here. This is just as you go, a really forgiving design to do. So we're going to find a space, and if you have pen and paper, please draw along with me, or you're going to do that at home when you rewatch the videos. We're going to start anywhere. I'm going to start here. I'm going to stitch down, and then I'm going to give myself a little loop. I'm saying loop because it's not a perfect circle, and it doesn't have to be. Come down and make another loop, but make them odd and different sizes. Don't make them all exactly the same. Wood grain, they're not all the same. Now we're going to move over a space. And this space or distance that you're going to move over will absolutely depend on you, how far apart you want to space this. And also it would depend on how big you make your knots. Do you also see that I'm not necessarily quilting or stitching or drawing in an absolute straight line? That's why I'm saying this is such a forgivable design. It allows you to make all sorts of wobbles, and it doesn't really matter. Make another little loop and work your way across, come down and make another loop. And so we're trying to space them kind of like in between so that they don't form a very specific line to line up with. And we're going to fill our space, however big space you have to fill. Right, now we're going to work our way back. So this is where I ended, and I'm going to go a little bit to the left, and I'm almost going to do like an echo line, but very free form and casual. And then echoing that line back again. Come over, and now I'm going to echo this section. Right, so I'm going to come down, and it doesn't matter if your stitch lines start touching each other. That's not the biggest issue. Come across and just swing your way around those curves. No specific must or mustn't. You just want to kind of start filling the space, a little bit of an evenness, so echoing, kind of echoing, but we really don't have sharp stops unless you're stopping in the ditch, like in a ditch or in a seam line, for instance here, or that would probably be now on the edge of your square that you're going to quilt. Now I'm going to start echoing that side. Okay, now this is typically an area that you will see happening, like here at the bottom, where I do have a space that requires a little bit more line, but not really up here. So I'll just go and maybe add just one section of the wood grain line that kind of just flows in. Move across. Now remember, we do want to try and do this all in one go. In other words, we don't want to really do stops and starts. So this will be stitching all in one go, and you kind of want to draw it that way as well. So I'm just going to do this line first, add this little section in there. And now I'm just going to ride back and give myself a little fill in over there. So do you see, you can go back and forth if you have larger gaps that you need to fill and you couldn't get to it earlier, or it just happened and created itself that way. Overstitch your travel line and just find yourself back there to fill the gap. So we're kind of just echoing our line, and that's it. There we have a nice and easy flowing wood grain without having to do a lot of traveling or trying to connect with those knotted centers. I really hope you will go and try this. Sandra will obviously explain to us more about the structure of the quilt, and then Jenny will give you a patchwork design to work with. I hope to see you next month. If not, a next video will be there, but I'm pretty sure I should be here. Enjoy, ladies. Have a good month.